we are actively seeing the impact that NIL money is having on draft prospects in the 2026 draft, as 3 prospects that were probably all going to go in the first round are going back to school. We're going to talk a little bit about what that means and round up the news from over the weekend for the Chicago Bulls and dive a little bit into the mailbag. All that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform I happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And so we're going to just do a quick roundup on all the news kind of impacting the Chicago Bulls and other teams heading into this summer and this offseason. We had some news going down over the course of this weekend. One of the biggest ones that came out was Billy Donovan. And, the two things between Billy Donovan and the search firm. So the Chicago Bulls have officially hired their search firm now that's going to help the team move on and find its next front office exec. We've heard that John Paxson is going to be heavily involved in that as well. That was something we found out going into Saturday, right, is that John Paxson was going to have more power and control over, and more say, I should say, is probably the better word to put that, in regards to what's going to happen with the front office search, right? Then we also heard that Billy Donovan is also going to have impact in that. And the question I have when it comes down to all that is it too many hands in the pot, right? I really want to know, what is this process going to look like? Are Billy Donovan and John Paxson going to be sitting in on these interviews? Are they going to be help signaling out candidates? The search firm that the Chicago Bulls have settled on to help them in this process, are they just bringing a number of names to the Chicago Bulls, and the Chicago Bulls are deciding who to interview? The exact whole way that this process is going to happen is going to be very interesting, because not only have we never really seen the Bulls do something like this to this level, it's also just a lot of just hands in the pot here, right? So you have Turnkey ZRG, which is going to be the search firm to help navigate the executive hiring process. We've heard that John Paxson is going to have say in that, who that next GM is. And then we also heard that Billy Donovan is going to have a say in the front office. So between that and Michael Reinsdorf also being involved, I don't know how involved Jerry's going to be. Jerry Reinsdorf could basically completely be stepped back. But it just seems like there's a lot of different mindsets, views, and stuff that's going on into this the search for the next firm. Next exec for this team. And it just, like, sometimes more eyes on it actually help, right? You have more perspectives, all that type of thing. John Paxson could come in from the perspective of somebody who has been an exec before. He never, and I'll say this, John Paxson, I still will call, was successful. The majority of his career as a GM was successful. Like, he built a playoff team. He rebuilt a team from where it was. Now, we never won a title under that because of things that were going on. Look at some of the misses in the draft. Of course, the Derrick Rose injury. So we never won a title, right? So it was never that level of success. But, he built some solid teams that had a vision, and then the last 5 years with him and Gar were terrible, right? So you have somebody with that perspective. You have somebody from a coaching perspective with Billy Donovan, and then you have an ownership perspective. And so the turnkey ZRG that's bringing in, helping bringing in the candidates, they're impartial, right? They're just looking at the names and stuff like that, looking at all of that. So, for what it's worth, Turnkey ZRG is rated as the 3rd best in the country, which they have earned high marks for their sports-focused approach when it comes down to it. The biggest successes that they have had have come with the college ranks, right? They helped Michigan hire Dusty May. They helped Indiana hire Kurt Kinjidi. And then, both those guys won national championships with their team. So when you look at their notable hires, Landon with the Pistons, right? That's NBA. He was president of basketball ops and the general manager with the Hawks. So they helped with those searches. They also helped with the NFL and hired general manager and head coach. The Falcons, they helped with that one. They helped a lot with St. Louis City SE with soccer. They helped them with a couple of times. They helped NHL with the Seattle Kraken. So this is a agency that's actually helped sports teams before. So it's not just kind of something out there, right? They also helped with, like I said, Michigan, Texas, Florida, and Indiana hire head football and basketball coaches. So they've helped before. adding that extra wrinkle of Paxton and Billy Donovan are just going to add a little bit of depth to that. And I don't necessarily feel like that's a bad thing. It's just, I don't know how to feel about what the Bulls are doing with this search. This thing is just really confusing to me in the sense that you have somebody who had to step down from the exec position before. You have a coach that has 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You don't have a complete buy-in from the head coach reportedly after, the last meeting that you guys had. And so it just leaves a lot of up in air. And I just hope that the Bulls are using all these different eyes to get this fucking right. Like, just pardon my frankness, but at the end of the day, if you're having all of this go on, you're hiring a search firm, you're having Billy Donovan and Paxton involved in it. Michael Reinsdorf has talked about he wants to be, more involved and have check-ins while still giving, a lot of latitude to whoever he hires. Like, all that sounds great, but like, just get the decision right. And if the Bulls need all this to make a decision, to get the right decision, and it ends up with us getting the right guy in position, then great. Like I said on yesterday's episode in the mailbag, right, is that even keeping Billy Donovan, I'm not going to say the Bulls can't be successful. I know my boy Winton's probably throwing his legs in the air every time he hears that Billy Donovan's probably going to stick around. But like, listen, somebody who runs your front office has so much that they have to do. Draft well, manage the money well, sign free agents, right? All that, and that's all happening this summer, that you can still drastically improve the team even if Billy Donovan isn't the right coach, right? And that may help you identify that Billy Donovan isn't the right coach. Right now, Billy Donovan seems like he is benefiting from the fact that AK and Eversley were so terrible at their job that the ownership wants to see how he does with an actually good front office running the show and him just being allowed to focus on coaching. And to that credit, okay, cool, great, cool. Just get it right? And then I think even if you have somebody that makes the right decisions with the roster and the right decisions with the draft and those type of things, that then could put even more of a spotlight on, okay, no, it is Billy. Like, we've drafted well, these players are good. We don't have doubt about the players. Billy's the doubt, right? So even if you ultimately want Billy Donovan not to be here as the head coach, which I'm not blaming anybody for, is that you still have to look at this and survey it in the sense that having the right person making the decisions day to day is still going to be the best person to put a spotlight on what Billy Donovan is or is not doing. And that's just the reality of it, right? So you got to figure out those things. We'll see how it's going to work out for this team overall, but that's the update to the front office search. Still no decision made on Billy Donovan. I was kind of keeping one ear out at all times to see if we heard anything with Billy Donovan. We did not over the weekend, and we are about 20 days away from the draft lottery, and I would hope that the Bulls have the front office exec in place either by that draft lottery or shortly thereafter, and we better damn well have a buy-in from Billy Donovan or not. Or maybe a lot of this is going to come down to if the Bulls get a top 4 pick. Like, it's just the Bulls are doing it right with getting it. Like, I think hiring the firm is the right decision. I know that some people kind of, judged Michael Reinsdorf by saying they were going to do that. And I understand that to a degree, but I still think that's probably the right decision because we've seen this ownership in front office not make the right decision. So getting an impartial eye on that is great. But if you get into the point where we've gone through the draft lottery and we still don't know the future of Billy Donovan for sure one way or another, and you still don't have a new exec, because then at that point, you got basically a month and a half at most before the draft, but the draft combine comes shortly after that. You need to be evaluating players. So I would hope that in the next 20 days, we get this decision. I think the next 20 days are very key for the Chicago Bulls to get this front office shit together, and let's see what's going to happen with it. And I mean, of course, it can go longer than that because you have the playoffs, and a guy like Matt Lloyd, if he is your guy, you still want to evaluate with that. Well, he's going to want to stay with his team and focus on that to the end of the playoffs till they're eliminated. So we'll see what's going to happen there. But let me know your guys' thoughts down below on that and how it affects the Bulls and all that type of stuff. But next thing I want to talk about is the draft, right? We've been covering a lot of draft prospects. I think already we're at like 12 draft prospects, and I'm not even heavily into my draft bag yet. Like, I really haven't even opened the draft content bag yet. We're going to really start that this week. We're going to start going position by position, different situations and scenario drafts, stuff like that. We already talked about top 4, talked about my favorite players at 9 and number 15, but now it's time to start opening the bag. We're going to start that tomorrow, but I want to talk about this with the NBA draft, right? We're starting to see that how the NIL is affecting the draft decisions, right? We've had a number of prospects decide to go back to school over the last couple of days, and all these guys would have probably been first-round picks to varying degrees, right? One of the first guys that we've seen that was going to go back is Alex Condon, right? Alex Condon, who, 2025, NCAA champion, and he's going back to do it again. He announced he's going to be returning back to the Florida Gators for his senior year. And you look at how he could have benefited coming off a championship winning season, right? With the one-seeded Florida team that would have absolutely helped him. He was projected to go to a late first-round pick in the 2026 NBA draft, and he decided to go back. And I think this is the first decision in where you're seeing how, if you're projected to go towards the end of the first round, some of those guys are going to go back. And the reason being is because of the NIL. But we're not done there, right? We're going to talk about the NIL portion of this. Caden Boozer also decided to go back as well. Go back to school. And, a lot of people, when they saw that notification he was going back to Duke, thought it was Cam Boozer. It's Caden Boozer who's going back, who was really good for the season. He had a terrible ending to that season and what he did in that last game. But, it was cut short. It is what it is. But he's still young. And one and done, everybody kind of expected him to be a one and done. But he's going against the grain. He's going back to school. He was a projected late first-round pick, much like Alex Condon. And now he's going to return to Duke Blue Devils. And then another guy that we recently talked about as well that's going back is Brayden Mullins. Now, Brayden Mullins, a guy that has a legit NBA shooting range, right? He hit a 35-footer in Duke to beat them in the Elite Eight, which is really good. And he's shown himself to be a really good shooter. He's comfortable shooting in movement, fighting off screens, those type of things. 6'6", legit size. He was also a guy that was projected to go, in that first round, right? More round pick number 15, kind of in the middle of the first round. You had Todd Pettiford as well, a guy that I covered earlier in the season as somebody. He was one of the first dominoes to fall. He would have been a first-round pick easily, right? Like you look at what he's did in regards to that. He was one of the best six men in the nation when it came down to it. He's a smaller guard, so there's that part of it that kind of maybe affected him as well. He's choosing to stay in Auburn for another season, and that just is what it is. Why are these guys deciding to go back, right? Not to say that a lot of these guys were going to be on the Bulls draft board, but it does affect the draft. Like, this was a draft that people have talked about. You can get players that have all-star potential late into the first round. And a big reason why is the NIL money, right? What we're starting to see now is the impact of how NIL money, what you can make in the NIL and making in the first couple of years in your NBA contract, if you're going to be a late first round pick, you're seeing the impact of that. Like, let's put it this way, right? A player that is drafted in the late first round is probably going to be making about, $4 to $5 million annually. Right, that's what it's going to do. If you're gonna be a mid to late first round pick, you're looking at about $4 to $5 million annually. When you are a player, especially one of the better players on a team, you can match that figure easily, and that's what we're starting to see. Like, I think a lot of these guys are looking at the fact that they're going to be late first round picks had they stay in the 2026 draft, but now that they're waiting to the 2027 draft, they probably will be top 10 picks, which then the money does create a separation there, right? So for players that have the chance to go in the top 10 following the next year in a different draft, you're going to start seeing some of those players go back to NIL. And that's just the reality of it. Now, some of these guys had the unfinished business quote. They need to keep developing or something like that. But that's just the reality of it. Like, if you're going to be a top 10 pick, then you're going to be making between 27 and 62 million on a rookie scale deal, which isn't bad, right? Like, that's amazing money. But when you are a late first round pick, that money drastically changes, right? Picks between 20 and 30 usually drop to about 14 to 17 million, right? So when you see players that are projected to go around that area in the draft, a lot of those guys are going to start going back to it. So if it's a weaker class, you make more money. When it's a deeper class, you're going to make less money, right? So what does this have? What's the impact this is having on the draft? The impact that this is going to have on is that teams, and maybe this helps the Bulls or some other teams, we don't know, right? But teams that are going to have late first round picks that were going into this draft, let's say, like, for example, let's just say the Boston Celtics at number 27, right? The Minnesota Timberwolves at number 28. They could have still gotten some talent at around that area that could have been excellent still for them, right? Especially considering their win now teams, you get older players, stuff like that. Now, some of those players are going to go a lot earlier now with the number of players that are going to go back into the draft. And so that's what you have to look at. And that's how it has an impact in longevity on a deep draft class like this for the Chicago Bulls when you're going to be missing out. Like, so now maybe those teams do trade out of those picks. Maybe those teams do some stuff like that. Now, would you still want to take advantage of it? No, I think the second round is probably going to be hit because some of these players that could have gone early in the second round may now become first round picks, right? So if you're a projected second round pick, you actually benefit from some of those guys in the mid first going back to school. Because now, if you're a guy like Malik Thomas, the guard out of Arkansas, right, 6'5" guard there, not a guy I had on my board for the Bulls, but if you were him, who was projected to go in one of the first 3 picks in the second round, you may now become a first-round pick, which the money from going from second to first-round pick is worth it as well. So these are just how the draft dominoes are going to fall, and this is just going to be an added wrinkle to how we have to look at the NBA draft for the next handful of years, because it is going to be different. And so the quality of the draft at the top is always going to stay the same. That's why you are always going to see teams that are willing to tank, because the quality at the top, if you are projected to be a top pick, most of those guys are going to stay on. You're projected to be top 10 to 15, you're probably going to stay on. You start getting into that mid-range and lower than that, those are where some guys are going to end up going back. And so we'll see that this is just going to be an added kind of wrinkle as we talk about going into the future of the NBA draft, but we'll see what's going to happen with that one. The last bit of news that we have to talk about when it comes to the Bulls, and this is more Bulls directly, is Joe Cowley of the Chicago Sun-Times, which still take everything with a grain of salt when it's Joe Cowley. I know he's taking his victory lap right now because the AK getting fired, right? But the fact of the matter is that a lot of Bulls fans have talked about guys like Anthony Simons, Colin Sexton, Nick Richards, like just basically saying, oh, these guys aren't coming back. Why are we playing them? Well, Joe Cowley of the Chicago Sun-Times talked about the fact that, no, some of these guys could come back. And it depends on what the Bulls do with the draft. Now, I'm not going to toot my own horn and say that I've told you guys so on this one, right? For everybody who ever said, oh, it's not going to matter, none of these guys are coming back anyway. That's not how the NBA works. With the fact that with bird rights, right? And even with cap space like the Bulls have, and not all that being able to be used on free agents, you're going to bring some of these guys back. I've said before, Colin Sexton, Nick Richards, or Zach Collins, one of those, combination of those 3 players are going to be back. 2 of those 3 players I think are going to be back, regardless of what we do in the draft, just because you still need veterans on there, and because you have bird rights, you're going to be willing to pay. And because we are now getting 2 first-round picks, which is going to be rookie-scale, cost-controlled money, you can bring those guys back at shorter term, but more expensive deals and still balance out your checks. It also helps safeguard your cap space. Like, let's say right now, and I'm not saying that this is the money that he should get, but if you sign Colin Sexton on a 2-year deal, $15 million per, so 2 years, $30 million, that money then, when it comes off the books in 2 years, Miles Buzelis is going to be up for his rookie scale extension at that point in time. You can give him that rookie scale extension. Colin Sexton's money will come off. You have 2 more rookies still on, 3 more, because Noah Essengate will still be on rookie scale extension too. So it's just how you manage and balance your money. And that's probably what I think is going to happen here as well. So guys like Anthony Simons, guys like Colin Sexton, guys like Zach Collins, guys like Nick Richards, maybe even Yabusele, could end up coming back on shorter term deals, regardless of what the money looks like. Because in the NBA, it's not as simple as starting from scratch like everybody thinks it is. You have to plan out how and where you want to use your money. So we'll see where that's going to happen at. But, that being reported by the Chicago Sun-Times, I wanted to talk about it because there's a chance that some of those guys are going to come back. We'll just see who it is. But with that said, we still got voicemails in the mailbag from over the weekend, because you guys have been calling in all week long, and thank you for that. So we're still trying to work out through some of that backlog that we got. So this first voicemail that we have, this one's from Brando.
Hey, good morning, Haize. How you feeling, brother? Look, this is your boy Brando, and I just want to say, man, I've been looking at some of these rookie prospects. I usually don't look that much into it until after the lottery is set, but after we got that second first round pick from Portland, I couldn't help myself. And obviously, you got the top 3, top 4, but I'm looking at Darius Aday Jr. and that kid has got superstar written all over him. You can just see it. You can just see it on him. You can see it in his game. The way he puts up numbers is just crazy. And coming from John Calipari, is like he puts him in the elite guards that he's kind of coached. And you think about that. He's been with John Wall, Jamal Murray, Derrick Rose, etc. And that kid, he's got it, bro. He's somebody that could come in and average 20 day one in the league. Like, he's going to hit the ground running. And I just wonder if he's in our range, if he would still be on the board and if we can take him, man. And so give me your take on how you think Darius Aday will look in a lineup with Josh Giddey, Modest, etc. And how do you think that will play out? And give me your thoughts on that. All right, brother. Love the show. Peace.
Darius Aday would be a great pick. Like, And I think Darius Cuff is one of those players that you kind of have to take regardless of who's on your draft board or anything like that. If he ends up falling to you, you probably take him because I do think Darius Cuff has top 5 talent. Now, does he fit in the backcourt with Josh Giddey as well? I say maybe no, but then again, we saw some of the best basketball that we saw from the Bulls was with Trey Jones and Josh Giddey in the backcourt together. So maybe the Bulls and the new front office guy looks at it like that, or maybe just maybe they look at it and say, "Hey, we got to take best player available regardless," and that may force us to move off of a guy like Josh Giddey. And I think that's the mindset that I want to see: best player available. We have so much fluidity with what we can do with our roster. Best player available is probably the way you want to go. But Darius Cuff is not really, he is not the defensive back. Like the reason why Trey Jones and Josh Giddey work because Trey is such a staunch defender. He's a really good defender. Darius Cuff isn't really that. He doesn't project to be that either, right? So, but you never know. But I do like Darius Cuff. I love the level of talent that he is. And if the Bulls decide to take him and figure out the rest later, that just is what it is. All right, let's get into this next voicemail, man. This one's from Reggie.
Hey, this is Reggie from calling in. I'm looking at people saying that John Pass is going to be having a say who's it to be the next front office GM, and I don't like that idea because I'm thinking he's going to want to get somebody who thinks in the same way he does, and I think like coaches, GMs have a period in time where they're really good at something and then they just fall off. We saw that happen with guys like Phil Jackson, Jerry Krause, and several others. So I don't know what Pat is doing, but he needs to, stay wherever he is, doing whatever he's doing. As for who the Bulls should draft, I like Burries at 9. Unless the Bulls get a better pick. Also, I'm thinking that the Bulls should, talk to Golden State if they still have the 11th pick. If I'm the Bulls, I'm calling them up and say, you know what, we'll take Jimmy off your hands if you take Patrick Williams, Okoro, and I just blame on the guy who we just got, guard who honestly isn't really an NBA player. But you take those 3 guys off our hands, I think combined they cost like $36 million. We'll take Jimmy Butler back. We'll get the $18 million trade exception, and we swap first round picks. We'll get the 11th pick, draft Yasso Lindbergh, and we'll still have 2 second round picks. I know a lot of people want Mara, and I do like his size, but the rebound is the issue with me. I think someone who's over 7 foot plays over 24 minutes a game, and there was a lot of games where he couldn't get more than like 6 or 7 rebounds. I'm just looking at that and like that doesn't make sense for a 7-footer. And how are you going to do that? I don't know why. Maybe it's because you didn't get in proper position. But for me, if you're a center and you can't average at least 8 rebounds in college, there's not much. I don't see much hope for you in the NBA. But as for the center spot, I keep seeing guys like Ruben Shedleu. I watched some of his games, and I saw that he had great footwork, excellent rebounder, really good defender. I wouldn't mind seeing him get picked up in the 2nd round. And Brayden Smith, a point guard from, I think it's
Pax is going to have a say. It is what it is. Like the Reinsdorf Saloro, like it wasn't even surprising to me. It was disappointing, but it wasn't even surprising to me that Pax is going to have a say. Pax is going to be involved. The search for him is going to be involved. Billy, if he stays, is going to be involved. It's just what it is. It's what's going to happen here. And at some point, things are what they are. As far as the Jimmy Butler trade that you laid out, I think the only way that the Warriors trade Jimmy Butler is if it's a 3-way trade and they're getting a star back. Now, that other team is going to want the picks. Now, they can want the future picks from Golden State because the Golden State have picks they can offer in 2030 and 2032, which the other team may want because Steph may not be there by then. And so maybe the Bulls can get their first round pick it's probably going to happen in this year's draft because I doubt unless it happens at the draft, right? Because they're not going to be able to make a huge trade until then. So we'll see. I'm not against it. Like, I just think this. Like, it's not long-term money. It's a 1-year deal back. I just want the Bulls to make smart decisions. If it's smart and it works out, great, right? So we'll see how the Bulls decide to use their cap space. But I had an episode on that, right? Like, the way you use your cap space isn't always just signing free agents outright. But we'll see what the Chicago Bulls are going to do with it. But that's my time for today. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central. You guys know you are the best part of the show as well. This offseason is not going to be simple. It's not. Between the draft, Billy Donovan's influence, the front office decisions, free agency coming up, the Bulls have a real chance at a turning point here. The question is, are they going to make the right turn? We'll see. But I want to thank you guys. Put your thoughts down in the comments on all of this and everything down below. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. As you guys already know, you can follow us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. But that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.